Martial artists can sometimes be put on pedestals by society for being highly honorable people just for achieving high heights in their respective combat sports. And a lot of times, the respect they've earned is well appointed because they live their lives through and through as disciplined and principled human beings. But sometimes, even a martial arts world champion who trained under the same system as the greats can reveal themselves to be a monster. Joe Rogan put it perfectly when he said,
"This is how it's looked upon in the martial arts world. If you're a man and you have someone who is your wife and she's smaller than you and female, you have the craziest advantage physically. It's the most awful tyranny physically if violence is involved. As men, we have to look at that as the weakest of most disgusting behaviors."
And this is the disturbing story of one of the best jiu-jitsu athletes to ever step foot on the mat, who turned out to be one of the weakest, most disgusting men in the sport. When Erberth Santos was first introduced to the sport of jiu-jitsu by his sister's boyfriend, he thought it was for sissies. And yet, when they finally convinced the 9-year-old to try it, he was so hooked that he even forgot to give back the gi that the gym kindly lent him. This harmless mistake could be an ironic sign of what's to come, because this certainly wouldn't be the last time he stole something that wasn't his. Erberth came from an impoverished community in Roraima where he would have to apply to the local social project to train because he couldn't afford to pay the fees for classes at a jiu-jitsu gym. Luckily for Erberth, he showed much promise from a young age and caught the attention of Coach Pedro Freitas, who became a mentor, inviting him to bigger gyms in the area, encouraging him to compete, and even showing up at Erberth's house to convince his mother to let him train when she was punching him for getting in trouble in the neighborhood or failing classes at school. Erberth's love for the sport grew stronger and stronger as he began competing and dominating in juniors events all around Brazil. By the time he was a 17-year-old blue belt, he won the Abu Dhabi World Pro, a tournament that would allow him to journey across the world and claim a prize of $8,000. It was that moment that he recognized the opportunity that his skills could offer and went full-time on this jiu-jitsu thing, quitting his job as a waiter to take training more seriously. Eventually, as he got better and better and earned a purple belt, Erberth caught the eye of Mauricio Rodriguez, the coach of the biggest and most well-known jiu-jitsu social project in the big city of Rio de Janeiro, where he invited street kids like Erberth to come and train for free. And this would be a great step up in competition from the much smaller training centers he was used to. But very early, Erberth fumbled his opportunity, and due to his attitude problems both on and off the mats, he was kicked out of the academy after multiple incidents with teammates. This forcing him to move to Sao Paulo and join Team Guigo under coach Luis Guilherme. Despite the rocky relationships that Erberth was developing, his success on the mats didn't change as he became known as one of the best purple belts in the world. But it came at a cost, as he was gaining a reputation as the bad boy of jiu-jitsu. It was said that he had a lack of support from the crowd, and he had few friends, which also contributed to the negative image that followed him. He could appear unpleasant and unwilling to make new friends, and that was one of the reasons for his rejection by the public. Erberth believed that his demeanor in competition was the reason that he was receiving boos and insults from the crowds, as well as criticism in private messages on social media. But when you go back and look at his behavior in matches as a purple belt, it's not hard to see why he wasn't a fan favorite. Like in this match where after spiking his opponent's head onto the floor, he shows no remorse, flexing to the crowd with a war t-shirt while the guy gets stretchered off the mat. As Erberth achieved the brown belt level with Team Guigo, he really caught his stride as a powerful and explosive grappler, making a major name for himself. His blitz passing was unmatched at the brown belt level, as he would ragdoll his opponents around to catch them out of position and get around their guards or land on their backs. He was also a high-flying heavyweight, not afraid to jump into an airborne triangle at any second, finishing many opponents at the highest level. It was also just after receiving his brown belt that Erberth got involved with the controversial Team Lloyd Irvin, located in Camp Springs, Maryland, where he would train and represent Team Lloyd Irvin while competing in the States, and return to Guigo when in Brazil. Erberth felt he fit well in the Lloyd Irvin camp because of their embodiment of the aggressive in-your-face style of training, competing, and even in many aspects of their off-the-mat lives. Master Lloyd's aggressive style was evident from his intense demeanor to his sales and marketing employees, and especially in his academy, where they had long, excruciating training sessions to establish the team's mentality and culture, building impenetrable minds, suffering every day in training so that the competitions felt easy. And this model proved successful as the team found international glory on the World Jiu-Jitsu stage, with world champions like JT Torres, Keenan Cornelius, and Ryan Hall, as well as MMA success from UFC team members like Dominic Cruz and Brandon Vera, all of whom spoke highly of the Team Lloyd Irvin system. But there were skeptics that felt that Master Lloyd's methods were unethical, saying that he used psychologically manipulative tactics to take advantage of impressionable young minds, often from vulnerable and impoverished youth in the Maryland area, to bring attention and revenue to his business. As the name of the gym spread across America, young athletes would travel to Maryland to meet and train with the jiu-jitsu guru in hopes of being put up in one of his fighter houses, where they could live and would get to train full-time in a world-class academy. The catch was Master Lloyd would expect them to obey his every command, from working long hours at the gym for as little as $4 per hour of pay, to answering his 3 a.m. phone calls and driving to his house to bring him cheeseburgers, rake leaves, or pick up dog poop. Outsiders looked at the team as medal chasers who would desperately do anything to win gold at tournaments, but they also started to notice cult-like characteristics from the team. They would rep their team logos, throw out Lloyd Irvin hand signs, and even get tattoos. The dark side of the team was later revealed. Members started leaving to open their own gyms and exposed that Master Lloyd was engaging in inappropriate behavior with female students. They were shaving his face, clipping his fingernails, and requesting massages. On other accounts, he was watched tickling, tackling, or chasing them around, and several students even felt that their coach was making touchy and aggressive advances on their wives, in addition to sharing a room with female students when the team was traveling, despite being in a long-term marriage himself with Mrs. Irvin. This toxic sexual culture became rooted in the team, as similar stories started to stir up about other members of the team. And it all came to a tipping point on New Year's Eve 2013, when 2 male students had been caught on the security camera of a church parking lot, carrying a drunken new female student. She claimed that night that they had raped her and left her crying for help when she sought legal action. After a long trial where the student defendants were supported financially by Master Lloyd, they were released and deemed not guilty, due ultimately to the camera footage being blurry. But this cited deeper investigation, and it was revealed to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community and to many unknowing Team Lloyd Irvin students that some of their peers already had a history of similar accusations, and so had Master Lloyd. Despite being involved in a gang beating and of a 17-year-old in 1989, where 4 men were convicted and sent to prison, Lloyd Irvin walked away a free man due to insufficient damning evidence against him. Regardless of his acquittals on these cases, the martial arts community were quick to blame Irvin for the corrosive environment he had created around his team. This same environment Erberth Santos had become deeply entrenched in, and while most high-profile competitors left the team when the investigation began in 2013, Erberth stayed loosely tied to Lloyd Irvin for a couple more years. By the end of 2014, Erberth was the hottest non-black belt fighter in the world, winning everything there was to win, including the South American, Brazilian, Pan American, and World Championships in the gi, plus the World Championships in no gi that year. And he was doing it in his weight class plus the absolute divisions. He was even beating many black belts as a brown belt, forcing his team to promote him to black belt in December of 2014. As he entered the top division of the sport, internal conflicts again began arising with his Brazilian team Guigo. Rumors were spreading that he was constantly fighting with teammates and had grown uncomfortable in training sessions with the team, and now for the 3rd time, Erberth was forced to leave another team. He now joined Caio Almeida of Almeida Jiu-Jitsu to start his black belt campaign, and at this point he had already long earned the title of Creonte, which in the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu means traitor. Because honor and legacy are deeply valued in the sport of Jiu-Jitsu, the word Creonte is thrown around describing those who leave their gym to train at another, and although this is a pretty antiquated term today, at the time it contributed negatively to the public image Erberth already had, especially with purists of the sport. But Erberth would soon earn himself much worse titles than traitor. He was off to a rocky start as a black belt, taking the worst loss of his career to Andre Galvao, going down 12-2 in points and then getting submitted. But this was just a wake-up call, as he would go on to beat the legend the next year in 2016 while going on an absolute tear, beating names like Felipe Pena, Bernardo Faria, Romulo Bahal, and Nicolas Marigali en route to what can only be described as a career year. And despite his success, Erberth was still hated by the jiu-jitsu crowds, who cheered as he lost in the finals of his weight class at the Brazilian National Championships and booed him as he won in the finals of the absolute division the same year, securing his first major title as a black belt. And this was only the beginning of the distaste for Erberth from the fans. Near the end of 2016, Erberth was in a car wreck, barely making out with his life, as his car flipped off the highway, rolling over at least 5 times. Miraculously, he made it out relatively unscathed. Erberth took to Instagram to post a photo of the wrecked car, along with a wordy, nonsensical caption, revealing that he had been having personal troubles in his life. "I had to go against everything and everyone. won, swam against the tide. I've had difficulties that seemed unbearable. I suffered, I cried, and I haven't slept for nights. But I believe in God and in my dreams. And this was seemingly the motivation he needed to carry into the next year, where he had the best season of his entire career. He would go on to win the Pan American Championship and a black belt world title in the same year, taking out opponents like Claudio Calasanz, Roberto Cyborg Abreu, and Lucas Hulk Barboza, on his way to 75 total matches on the year and making more money than he ever had before. But Erberth also got exposed for his activities off the mat that year. There were rumors of a sex scandal going around where the new world champion had shared a video of him having rough intercourse to a group chat of 12 friends. One of them, however, shared this video outside of the group, and this person took it upon themselves to expose the act with the BJJ community, and more specifically with Erberth's teammates and coaches. Erberth found out who this person was, and in a long text thread, threatened to have the person killed, saying, "I know you're someone close to me. I'm going to kill you. Write this down because I'll make sure I go to jail for this." And he even continued to threaten the person's mother. Although no records of any legal action came to light for this matter, the distractions seemed to affect his personal career, as by 2018, he competed only 45 times and lost 8 times, 5 being from a submission loss, which was more than he had ever been beaten in a single season before. Things continued to spiral downward, even worse the following year, as he would lose 5 out of 13 matches on the year and couldn't secure a major tournament win of any kind. It looked like he couldn't tap into the same mindset that allowed him to be a consistently successful competitor, and his general mental health worsened as well. Erberth became infamous as a dirty fighter that would take any chance to dig at an opponent and gain a mental edge. Sometimes he would do things that fell under a gray area in the rules, but by 2019 he was so unstable that he became involved in multiple brawls at events. And the worst of them all came on the big stage at BJJ Stars against Felipe Pena. After injuring his knee early in the match, there was a stoppage so that the doctor could check on Erberth, but something caught his attention in the crowd, causing him to dash off the stage and fight somebody. After eating some punches and kicks, he lunged across the stage at someone else and eventually had to be taken out of the arena by security. He later claimed that there were members of Felipe's camp, including Felipe's brother, that were hurling racial insults towards him throughout both the build-up of the match and the fight itself. This earned Erberth a 1-year suspension from the IBJJF while he sat around with his injured knee. This inability to compete for the first time sent him into an even darker times as he crashed another vehicle, got addicted to smoking weed, started training less and less, got a woman pregnant unexpectedly, and started going broke as he had to move out of his apartment and back into the favelas of Brazil as he sunk deeper into a period of depression. It was difficult for Erberth to find any matches for the remainder of the year because he was pretty much blacklisted from all competitions due to being so unpredictable as a competitor. One of the few matches he did was in Abu Dhabi, where he had to be hospitalized with dehydration after quitting in the semifinals, supposedly due to cutting over 24 pounds in one day to make weight. But many have speculated that it looks more like he peed his pants in this match as things started going the way of his opponent. And his 2021 year ended with an Instagram post of him getting escorted out of a bar from multiple police with guns drawn. Erberth is shouting and arguing with police, claiming that they're removing him from the bar for racial reasons, but there's no evidence to back this up. This was a competitive low for Erberth, and his career really didn't peak again from this point. Each year he continued to compete less and less, and by 2022 he joined another team in Atos Jiu-Jitsu headed by his former rival Andre Galvao, when he returned to the World Championships but lost his first match of the day, and this would be the last time we ever saw him on the mat at just 28 years old. One year after his last match in 2022, Erberth was posting photos on his Instagram from a hospital bed after receiving surgery to remove cartilage from an injured elbow. He also promised to focus on getting strong again to come back to competing, but in the photos, it was clear that his body had deteriorated drastically from his peak as a menacing heavyweight, and many had speculated that this could be due to partying or drug addiction. Shortly after this, his social media presence had disappeared until he posted this story on August 24th, 2023, which translates to "Don't believe it." And this was in response to the news that he had been arrested alongside fellow Jiu-Jitsu black belt Andre Pessoa following a local Tres Lagoas Jiu-Jitsu tournament where the two were coaching students. The two were arrested for a crime committed together on August 21st, where footage shows them stealing from an apartment where a distressed woman is arguing with them. She was one of 2 sex workers that they had hired for the evening before violently raping and assaulting both 24-year-old women and ransacking their home on the way out. When the arrest was made, the two were interrogated and it was revealed that they had committed similar sexual assaults against at least 4 women, using extreme violence and even tying the women up in one case. Police also apprehended 26 cell phones, cash, knives, and firearms in the possession of Erberth and Andre, all of which they stole throughout their crime spree. Both men confessed to their crimes and have been transferred to prison in Sao Paulo, awaiting trial and final sentencing. But it's safe to say that Erberth will be locked away for a long time. In response to the story, young up-and-coming Jiu-Jitsu world champion Izaki Bayans said on a podcast, "He's a guy who has a difficult life story, who preferred to make the wrong choices. For a long time, he thought he owned the world because he was a great champion. You being a great champion doesn't make you better than anyone else." Many Brazilians have shared their sentiments about Erberth, like this commenter who said, "It's very common to hear from our athletes, both in BJJ and in soccer, stories like Erberth's. That is, poor kid, black, has meteoric success, can't handle the pressure and money, and then ends up very bad, sick, and mentally unstable." But on the other hand, there are endless examples of athletes that grew up in similar environments to Erberth's, but instead of becoming deranged criminals, they've grown up to epitomize professionalism as competitors and humility as people. It may seem like the champions we see on TV have achieved perfection in their lives, thanks to their unwavering discipline to the craft. But in reality, martial arts can't save everyone.